thing that could hurt Biden with women, especially black women who are the core of the party, is Anita Hill. So hours after former Vice President Joe Biden's presidential campaign tried to preempt critics on the day of its launch by saying he'd spoken with Anita Hill and shared his regret for when he, as chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, grilled her somewhat unfairly during the 1991 testimony about Clarence Thomas. Hill told the New York Times she did not accept Biden's apology, nor would she characterize it as one. So she said, according to the New York Times, that she, quote, left the conversation feeling deeply unsatisfied and declined to characterize his words to her as an apology. She said she is not convinced that Mr. Biden truly accepts the harm he caused her and other women who suffered sexual harassment and gender violence, saying, quote, I cannot be satisfied by simply saying I'm sorry for what happened to you. I'll be satisfied when I know there's real change and real accountability and real purpose. Do you think there has been real change and real accountability in this record? Like, I don't see it other than the fact that he's running for president and he wants to get out in front of this problem that could hurt him with women and especially women of color, which are a huge part of the Democratic Party electorate.
Well, I mean, another thing here, a perfect example of what I mean, because I mean, his support among women has gained 3%. First off, but Anita Hill, yeah, it's a serious thing that Biden's going to have to overcome. But I think that Biden already overcame it because his support still has stayed stagnant. What would have been a red flag here is we can't always go off of polls. Yes, that is not how you can really work it out with many of how they're doing, at least nationwide. The polling that is most accurate is obviously primary. But getting back to the topic, so I don't go off into space, with Anita Hill, that definitely could be a bit of a problem. But I think that Biden already kind of stepped over it, it seems. And we'll see really in South Carolina if that's going to be affecting him a lot with the women of color. I mean, because Hillary Clinton, I wanted to say she's a very black-friendly candidate, if you would mind me saying, because it's a video of her actually saying, come back and talk to me once all of your problems are fixed. That one of the black supporters, who actually was from North Carolina, was going up to her at a campaign stop, asking her questions about the housing crisis in Charlotte. And she just went into a very rude attitude with the guy. And, she won South Carolina by a pretty big percent. That shocked me quite a lot. But I think that Biden's going to probably see the effects, if there even are any, in the South Carolina primary, because that's really kind of like the card of if you have the minority support there in Georgia. Those are the two states I would say, and possibly.
I really don't see how Biden can make a case that he's better to fight for the black African American community over the two black people who are very prominent candidates in the race.
Well, what, you mean Kamala and Corey? I mean, because they're not very very high up there. They're more of
Kamala and Corey are going to be getting a lot of media coverage. There's going to be a lot of campaigning.
True.
They're going to put a lot of effort, especially in South Carolina, and I think it's going to catch their eye. For a big degree.
I think that what that's going to do is I think that's going to make a more tougher race for second in line spots, because Bernie is focusing a lot on Iowa. Same thing with many of the candidates. I mean, most of the candidates are focusing on Iowa, but Kamala and Corey said it seems like they have the attitude of saying, well, you have no chance now. Well, let's just go to the state where we might actually have the most chance in. Corey's mostly been in New Hampshire and South Carolina. Kamala, yeah, she's been in South Carolina. For some reason, she's gone to California a lot. That's a pretty crucial primary.
Well, she's from California.
Do I really think she's going to win California? No. A lot of Californians hate her after 2016 senatorial election. People liked her before then because of her attorney general record, which, by the way, was a very conservative attorney general record. That wasn't, any like sort of Democrat attorney general record that I would say off the top of my head. She had probably more of a record that looked like the Oklahoma attorney general rather than California attorney general, which, by the way, her campaign for the attorney general race was completely different than what her record showed. A complete black and white picture there. And, Kamala might seem like a strong candidate, but again, with the contributions, it's going to be a controversy to see where she's getting the majority of her money from, because I personally think she's getting a lot of it from companies like Beto O'Rourke.
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to become more to light over time. All right. So Kate Bedingfield, who's Biden's deputy campaign manager, said earlier today that Biden and Hill had a private discussion where he shared with her directly his regret for what he had endured and his admiration for everything she's done to change the culture around sexual harassment in the country. So yeah, I've been pretty much playing all the right notes, very kind of stage managed. Yeah, right now, all right, we are going to get back in. We're going to continue the show in just 45 seconds. So stay with us. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show today. It's now, before we get into our next story, though, I do want to let you know about some important things coming up on the Spencer Walsh Radio Network. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a new episode of The Wake Up Tomorrow, and The List has a new episode of Game of Thrones talk. Now, if you watch Thrones, we're talking episode 2. Get ready for episode 3, the big battle, Winterfell coming up. It's going to be huge. We're talking Thrones with Dirk Paleo on The List, available wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe now. All right, before we get to our next story, actually, you know what? I think we can get to our next story. It's all about Twitter, and for some reason, why they're not going to be banning white nationalists. All right, ladies and gentlemen, next story on the line. We are talking Twitter. Twitter, they're reportedly worried that banning Nazis would reportedly mean banning Republican politicians who happen to be caught up in the crosshair of any reasonable Nazi criteria. So let's read more into this article about it in Splinter News today. Worth looking into. The fact that Twitter has a white supremacist problem has long been one of the more pointed criticisms, again, of the social media giant. It was the idea of banning Nazis. You got Alex Jones facing some sort of kind of a deplatforming pressure here that we've seen. He's had to deal with it a lot. We know that. We also do know that there has been a pretty consistent effort on the part of Dorsey kind of to fast in caves and do like weird social media rich person things, but also, I mean, he has kind of been trying to fix this. He's been definitely given this. He's been better on this than Mark Zuckerberg, but again, it is hard to be worse on this than Mark Zuckerberg. All right, so that is kind of the thing. It's kind of become an idea. This is a bad sign for Twitter. In the Twitter executives, it's kind of a bad idea when you're the point where ban Nazis has become shorthand joke kind of ish for how to fix everything wrong with the platform. But despite the public outcry over the proliferation of racist white nationalists and yes, overtly Nazi users on the site, Twitter's done a pretty bad job of actually doing anything about it. And on Thursday, the public got a glimpse of just one reason why. And I mean, I think it's definitely going to be interesting to see how Twitter, they have powerful people. They're well connected, probably within Washington, and they're a corporation. The last thing corporations want to do is rock the boat, because corporations, most likely, they're pretty big, they're pretty wealthy, they're pretty powerful, and pretty successful, and they did that by keeping things the way they are. They have established kind of a set of circumstances that are beneficial to them. They're beneficial to them, and they say, they say that there is a better, there's a better possibility, there's a better chance that they keep things the way they are, which is profitable for Twitter, by not really doing anything, not really taking any sort of major action to make a change. So this all kind of came to light in a Thursday expose from Vice's Motherboard. Journalists Joseph Cox and Jason Kobler reported that there had been a serious concern among Twitter staffers about that by targeting right-wing hate speech, similar to how the site has already cracked down on international terrorist chatter, the platform could end up banning Republican elected officials too. So yeah, that is a very, very telling there. It doesn't look good for the Republican elected officials that their algorithm would catch up. Twitter's algorithm would catch them up in this kind of hate speech fury kind of thing. And yeah, it's definitely very telling. And the thing is, and it shows you to the point I believe I was making a few episodes ago, is the fact that Republicans, like their main point is like they're not that. The thing about people who want to swear, like you can do all you want to try and like get these people to be on your side, but like I think it's very funny that even though I mean obviously Twitter has not done very much, like President Trump and millions of other conservatives are saying, "Oh, my tweets are shadow banned. Twitter doesn't like conservatives. They're attacking me, attacking me, attacking me, attacking me, attacking me, etc., etc., etc." It just goes on and on and on. It's nonstop. It's kind of ridiculous. So, yeah, it was a recent all-hands meeting for Twitter staff. The site reports the question of why the site Twitter hasn't gone after white nationalists was raised, only to be roundly shot down by company executives. So here's this Motherboard, quote from Motherboard. With every sort of content filter, there is a trade-off. The Twitter executive explained when a platform aggressively encounters ISIS content, for instance, it can also flag innocent accounts as well, such as Arabic language broadcasters. Society in general accepts the benefit of banning ISIS for inconveniencing some others, he said. So yeah, like that's a pretty interesting point. So like probably some Arabic guy who has his account shut down, probably not going to be very happy about that, but people say, okay, we just can't have ISIS stuff going around on Twitter. Like, that's not okay to have. But it's a little bit different, because in separate discussions verified by Motherboard, that employee who posed the initial question said Twitter hasn't taken the same aggressive approach to white supremacist content because the collateral accounts that are impacted can, in some instances, be possibly, maybe even Republican politicians. So that is not very good. The employee argued that on a technical level, content from Republican politicians can be swept up by algorithms, aggressively removing white supremacist material. Banning politicians wouldn't be a trade-off for flagging all white supremacist propaganda. So pretty much, he argued: A, stop white supremacist propaganda, or B, ban some Republican politicians, risk anger for them, and more possibly oversight, more headache, more like risk, which corporations obviously want to avoid at all costs. So that it's not worth it. That's what they're saying. Twitter pushed back for its part on the employee's assessment, telling Motherboard that it is not an accurate characterization of our policies or enforcement at any level. Yeah, obviously Twitter put out the statement there because they had to, but the real problem here is there's a critical mass of GOP politicians who spout content virtually indistinguishable than that of what's coming from white supremacists. And we got Steve King, you got so many others as well who have just been incredibly either dog whistling about this or even out in the open, which is pretty incredible. So, and while it might seem to those who spend an upsettingly disproportionate time on Twitter, this is the end all be all. The fact remains that while banning Nazis from the site is unquestionably good, you want to do that, right? It affects that would nevertheless be mitigated by the sheer volume of real-world Republicans who would sound eerily similar. Put it more simply, Twitter might have a white supremacist problem, but American politics and the Republican Party as a whole also is a very serious white supremacist problem that they have to deal with as well, because that's not going to be going away anytime soon here. They're going to be continuing to fight and have to deal with that problem. And the question is, do they want to? Can they deal with that white supremacist problem? Can they get a base of people and a base of elected politicians who don't sound sometimes like white nationalists and still have a party? That's going to be an interesting question for the GOP to grapple with, and this story is only a small kernel of that larger truth and concept. That is for sure, and it's going to be something the GOP is going to have to face if they really want to actually do care about facing it. All right, yeah, so this is News Flash, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for listening. Please, if you like this, if you're coming to us for the first time, if you watch Game of Thrones, if you like to be informed in the mornings, or if you want to learn a little bit more about history, our network is for you. Please go check out Spreaker.com/TSWS and subscribe, support your local independent media station. This is SWRN, of course, not NPR. I know it sounds a lot like NPR, if you've ever heard it. All right, so yeah, that is, we still do have a little bit more of a show left. To join us, please to welcome back to the show, James Stanley. He is our SWRN senior political contributor. James, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on the show.
All right, James obviously hosts PolitiTalk over on JSPN. He's been on obviously a good amount of times. Yeah, so despite last year's blue wave, which washed over the House, the GOP increased its Senate majority in part by picking off two conservative Democrats in Republican-leaning